Have you ever noticed how your mind refuses to let moments simply be? A conversation ends, yet you replay it again and again, every word, every expression, every tiny shift in tone. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, as your thoughts turn into endless corridors, each one leading into another and another and another. You think about what you should have said, what you should have done, what could have happened if only you had been different, better, sharper, more careful. It feels like your mind is a theatre that never closes. The lights stay on, the screen keeps flickering, and you are both the audience and the actor who can't rest. There is a certain loneliness in this kind of thinking, not the kind caused by being physically alone, but the loneliness that grows inside of you, the kind that comes from carrying entire worlds in your head while trying to look calm on the outside. While others move on easily, you linger, you analyze small details, replay memories like evidence, searching for hidden meaning or danger. The world sees you quiet, thoughtful, maybe even composed, but inside, your mind is a storm. You overthink not because you are weak, but because something inside you is trying desperately to stay safe. Overthinking is not just worry, it is a defense mechanism, a survival instinct. Your mind believes that if it can examine everything closely enough, you won't be surprised, hurt, abandoned, humiliated. So it rewinds, it revisits, it loops. It tries to predict the future, rewrite the past, and control the present all at once. The mind becomes a soldier standing guard in a world it doesn't quite trust. But this protection comes with a price. The more you think, the less you live. The more you analyze, the less you feel. The mind that is always preparing cannot rest. The heart that is always defending cannot receive. And slowly, your thoughts, once meant to keep you safe, begin to cage you instead. Yet, you didn't choose this. No one wakes up one day and decides to overthink their way through life. Something shaped you, something taught you that you must be careful. Something made you believe that mistakes are dangerous, that emotions must be managed, that you must always be one step ahead. So the real question is not, why do you overthink? The real question is, where did this all begin, and how do you finally let your mind rest? Have you ever wondered when it all began, this endless analyzing, this need to predict, to prepare, to stay one step ahead of everything and everyone? It didn't start in adulthood, not during heartbreak, not during the complicated storms of responsibilities and relationships. It began long before that, in small rooms, quiet moments, and unspoken rules. It began when you were just a child. Picture a little version of you. Sitting at the dinner table, small hands wrapped around the edge of the chair, eyes scanning faces instead of food. You learned to read emotions, not for curiosity, but for survival. The tone of a voice, the way a door closed, the heaviness of footsteps. These were signals, clues, warning signs. You didn't know the language of psychology then, but you understood something primal. Your world could change without warning. And so you developed a skill: anticipation. If you could sense the storm before it hit, maybe you could avoid the thunder. Attachment theory calls this hypervigilance. The child begins to carry an invisible radar, always scanning for danger, disapproval, disappointment. And when love is inconsistent, you learn to perform for it. When affection feels earned instead of given, you learn to become perfect. When mistakes feel costly, you learn to stay silent, so you rehearsed your words long before speaking them. You apologized even when you didn't know what you'd done. You learned to think and think and think, because thinking felt safer than feeling. Feeling was unpredictable. Feeling was risky. Feeling could lead to pain. And the brain, especially a young one, shapes itself around the environments that raised it. Neural pathways form like trails. The more a path is walked, the stronger it becomes. So, the rule settles into the mind: think first, feel later, speak last. You didn't know it was happening, it just became who you were. And while other children ran with open hearts, you held yours close. While others made mistakes and simply moved on, you remembered every one of yours, studied them, punished yourself with them, used them as lessons for future avoidance. You became the careful one, the observant one, the one who never let their guard down fully. But childhood does not stay in childhood. Patterns do not vanish just because time passes. That child, the one who learned to survive by thinking, grows up. And the habit of protection follows them into every room, every relationship, every moment of adulthood. And so, the child who once thought to stay safe becomes the adult who cannot stop thinking at all. At some point, childhood ends, but the patterns you learn to survive do not. They simply disguise themselves. You grow older, you move into new rooms, new friendships, new relationships, and yet something quiet and familiar follows you. The carefulness, the hesitation, the constant need to measure every word before it leaves your lips. You become what people call the thoughtful one, the calm one, the nice one. They think it's your personality. They don't realize it's your armor. You become the person who holds yourself together even when you're breaking. You'd rather apologize than argue. You'd rather say it's fine than admit you've been hurt. Conflict feels dangerous, so you avoid it, sidestep it, swallow it. Your emotions become something you manage privately, behind a closed door, because somewhere deep inside, you still believe that being too much, needing too much, feeling too much will push people away. And so, your mind becomes your shield. You analyze everything. A text message, a pause in conversation, the shift in someone's tone. You study words like a language exam you cannot afford to fail. You play out conversations in your head long before they occur. You rehearse what you'll say, how you'll respond, how you'll stay composed. In your mind, life becomes a chessboard. Every thought a piece you must place with intention. Every response something that must be prepared, softened, perfected. It's exhausting, but it feels necessary, because caring deeply has always felt risky, because letting your guard down has never felt safe. So you try to stay ahead of pain by thinking your way around it. Yet here is the paradox that hurts the most. You overthink because you feel everything too intensely, but the world believes you feel nothing at all. They see the calm exterior and assume distance. They see the quiet and assume disinterest. They see the careful tone and assume emotional detachment. They do not see the storm inside, the fear of hurting others, the fear of being misunderstood, the longing to be seen without being judged. You become invisible not because you fade, but because you hide so well. And sometimes, late at night, you wonder who you might have been if you didn't have to think so much just to exist. If you could speak without fear, if you could feel without caution, if you could trust the world enough to simply be. But those questions have roots that lead deeper into the very way your mind learned to survive. And to understand the struggle, you must understand the machinery of the mind itself. Have you ever noticed how your mind doesn't simply think, it interrogates? It pulls apart moments like threads, as if unraveling them will reveal some hidden safety code. To someone else, it may look like worry, but what is happening inside you runs far deeper than that. Overthinking is not random. It is the brain trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. Cognitive psychology calls this rumination the looping of thoughts that never resolve. The mind replays a moment, not to understand it, but to feel safe from it. Your brain believes that if it analyzes the situation enough times, it will never be caught unprepared. The problem is that rumination solves nothing, it only exhausts you. Attachment theory adds another layer: hypervigilance. When emotional safety was uncertain in childhood, your nervous system learned to stay alert. The child who didn't know what version of love they would receive became the adult who watches closely, thinks carefully, reads between every line. It is not that you want to think this much. It is that a younger part of you believes that if you stop thinking, something bad might happen. Neuroscience completes the picture. Your brain has a network called the default mode network, the part responsible for internal storytelling, daydreaming, memory, and identity. In most people, it rests when they are calm. But in overthinkers, it stays hyperactive, even in silence, even in stillness. The brain keeps running scenes like a film reel it cannot pause. Studies show that overthinkers often have heightened cortisol sensitivity, meaning the body reacts to emotional uncertainty the same way it reacts to physical danger. So the real truth is this: your brain cannot tell the difference between danger and discomfort, between a threat to your body and a threat to your heart. When someone takes too long to reply, when a conversation feels unresolved, when you sense distance or confusion, your mind panics as if survival is at stake. So it thinks harder, it digs deeper, it searches for meaning where none may exist. Not because you are dramatic, not because you are weak, but because long ago your nervous system learned that thinking is how you stay alive. And so your mind became a shield. But shields are heavy. And no matter how strong you are, carrying one every waking moment takes its toll. This is where the shadow begins to form, where protection slowly turns into self-imprisonment. And to understand that darkness, we must now step into it. There is a moment, often late at night, when the world is quiet and no one is asking anything of you, yet your mind refuses to rest. You stare at the ceiling, at the dim light leaking from the hallway, and it feels like your thoughts are waves crashing endlessly against the walls of your skull. You're exhausted, but your mind is wide awake. It races through memories, possibilities, mistakes, imagined futures that haven't happened and may never happen, and still, you cannot let go. Overthinking feels like drowning slowly, silently, while everyone else believes you're breathing just fine. This is the shadow side. The cost hidden behind the mask of being composed, thoughtful, and responsible. People admire your self-control, your awareness, your emotional intelligence. They don't see the toll. They don't see how every decision, no matter how small, becomes a battlefield in your head. They don't see how you hesitate before speaking, because you are editing yourself in real time. They don't see how you replay conversations after they're over, searching for mistakes that never existed. There is a kind of emotional paralysis that comes from thinking too much. You want to move, to choose, to act, but you fear the consequences of choosing wrong. So you wait, you delay, you stall. You tell yourself you're just being careful, just being responsible. But deep down, you know there is fear underneath the caution. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of hurting someone, fear of being seen too clearly, fear of being rejected, so you hold yourself back, quietly, gently, but consistently, and life becomes something you observe instead of something you fully experience. Psychologists call this self-sabotage, through avoidance. You don't fail because you can't succeed, you fail because you never allow yourself to try. The overthinking mind convinces you that certainty must come before action, when, in reality, certainty only arrives after stepping forward. And the most painful part is that you blame yourself for all of it. You punish yourself for feeling deeply, for caring, for thinking, for not being able to simply let things go the way others seem to, as if your sensitivity is a flaw, as if your inner world is something to be ashamed of. But this shadow did not form in isolation. You did not learn to overthink alone. The world around you, the expectations, the silent pressures, the roles you were praised for, all of it shaped the cage you now carry. And, without realizing it, society has been teaching you to keep that cage locked. Have you noticed how the world applauds the very traits that are quietly destroying you? They praise you for being so mature for your age, for being composed, thoughtful, responsible. They admire how you never overreact, how you think before you speak, how you handle everything so gracefully. They call it wisdom. They call it emotional control. But they don't realize it wasn't maturity, it was survival. From a young age, you learned that being careful made people more comfortable with you. Adults smiled when you were quiet and polite. Teachers praised you for being well behaved. You weren't the child who cried loudly or demanded attention. You were the one who learned to fold your feelings inward, to manage your own storms in silence. And when the world rewarded you for it, the pattern didn't just stay, it rooted itself into your identity. As you grew older, this trait followed you. Workplaces love people like you, the dependable ones, the ones who double-check everything, the ones who stay late because they can't bear the thought of leaving something undone. You become the person others trust to handle the pressure, to think things through, to not lose control. But nobody stops to ask who is holding you. Relationships reinforce it too. People feel safe with someone who doesn't challenge much, who gives more than they take, who forgives quietly, who swallows the hurt instead of making it visible. They say you're understanding, patient, emotionally stable. They do not see the weight of all the unspoken things you carry simply to keep the peace. So you learn to perform, to be what others need, to manage your emotions before they reach the surface, to measure your words so no one misunderstands, to anticipate others' reactions before they occur. You become practiced in keeping the world calm, even if it means you never are. But here is the quiet tragedy. When you are always performing, you eventually lose sight of the self beneath the performance. The world celebrates the mask and forgets the person wearing it. And the longer you play the role, the strong one, the reliable one, the gentle one, the unbreaking one, the more distant your own emotions begin to feel. You start to wonder if anyone actually knows you, or if they only love the version of you that keeps everything under control. You learn to exist without taking up space. But something inside you still remembers what it felt like to want softness, warmth, presence, to feel without fear. And the longer those needs go unspoken, the heavier the silence becomes. There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, when the weight becomes noticeable. Not all at once, but slowly. You wake up tired, even on days you slept. You feel surrounded, even when alone. Your thoughts no longer come one at a time, they arrive in floods. And somewhere between holding yourself together and making sure everyone else is comfortable, you realize something quietly devastating. You no longer know what you feel. Chronic self-doubt becomes your companion. You don't trust your own emotions, your own memory, your own instincts. You replay decisions again and again, searching for reassurance that never stays. You question whether people care, whether you matter, whether you are loved, not because others haven't shown it, but because vulnerability feels like walking barefoot across broken glass. You want connection, but the moment it gets close, your mind begins to protect you again by pulling you back. And so love starts to feel distant, not absent, just out of reach. You may be with someone, speak with them, laugh with them, share a home and a life with them, and still feel alone. Not because they don't care, not because they don't try, but because opening your chest, letting another see your raw inner world, feels too exposed, too dangerous, too familiar to the pain you once learned to avoid. So you hold yourself at arm's length from others and from yourself. This is where isolation begins, the quiet kind, the kind no one else sees. You still show up, you still smile, you still talk, but there is a softness missing, a presence, a warmth that you keep guarded. You become emotionally invisible, even in rooms where you are deeply loved. Psychologists call this anxiety masked by competence. You function, you achieve, you handle everything, and people admire how strong you seem. They have no idea you are holding your breath every day of your life. But perhaps the most heartbreaking consequence is this. You start to believe that being understood is impossible. You think, no one truly sees me. You think, if I speak, I'll be misunderstood. You think it's easier to stay quiet. But silence has a cost. The longer you silence your inner world, the further you drift from yourself. And one day, you may look in the mirror and realize you do not recognize the person staring back. Not because you've changed, but because you've been disappearing, slowly, quietly, while keeping everything together. Yet, even here, in the heaviness, something important remains. A longing, a hope, a possibility. The part of you that wants peace has not died, it is waiting. Which brings us to the beginning of healing. There is a moment in every overthinker's life when the mind grows tired of its own storms. Not because the thoughts have stopped, but because something inside you begins to whisper, there has to be another way to live. Healing does not begin with forcing yourself to stop thinking. If it were that simple, you would have done it long ago. Healing begins with something softer, something far more human. It begins with understanding that the mind started overthinking to protect you, not to harm you. The goal is not to silence your thoughts. The goal is to stop treating them like threats. You learn to sit with uncertainty the way you would sit with a child who is afraid of the dark, gently, patiently, without judgment. You begin to realize that not every unanswered question is a danger. Not every silence is rejection. Not every distance means you did something wrong. The world stops being a puzzle that needs solving and becomes a place you can experience moment by moment. This is what psychologists call emotional regulation, letting emotions exist in the body without immediately rushing to explain or control them. You place a hand on your chest and simply breathe through the sensation. Instead of interrogating it, you allow sadness to feel sad. You allow disappointment to sting. You allow joy, even joy, to arrive without waiting for the catch. Healing also means learning to feel before you solve. When something hurts, your first instinct is to think about it. But true healing asks you to feel it first, without analysis. Sadness, fear, hope, desire. These emotions are not wrong, they are simply human. Your nervous system, once always on alert, slowly learns a new language. Grounding, a moment of deep exhale, a walk without, headphones. The sun warming your face, the sensation of your feet touching the floor. Presence is not poetic, it is physical. The body must feel safe before the mind ever will. And perhaps most importantly, you learn that mistakes are not catastrophes. They are part of being alive. You do not have to perform your way into being loved. You do not have to earn your right to exist. You do not have to be perfect to be held. The journey is not sudden. It is slow, gentle, like thawing after a long winter. But somewhere along the way, the mind loosens its grip. The storms begin to soften. And in small, ordinary moments, you taste peace not as a concept, but as something real. Which leads us to the final truth, the kind that stays long after the video ends. There is something quietly powerful about recognizing that your mind has been trying to protect you all along. Every thought loop, every overanalysis, every sleepless night, none of it was because you were broken. It was because somewhere deep inside, a younger version of you was still trying to keep you safe. But maybe, now, you are allowed to set the armor down. You don't have to think your way through every moment of your life. You don't have to rehearse conversations before they happen. You don't have to treat every silence like a threat. Life is not a test you must pass. It is not a performance you must perfect. It is a series of small, fleeting moments, some ordinary, some breathtaking, some painful, and each one is meant to be lived, not solved. Maybe healing isn't about becoming fearless. Maybe it's about allowing yourself to feel afraid and still choosing to step forward, to feel uncertain and still choose to speak, to feel vulnerable and still choose to open your heart. Connection is not built through perfection. It is built through presence. Through allowing yourself to be seen, not as the polished version, but the real one. the one who feels deeply, thinks deeply, loves deeply. Imperfection is not a flaw. It is the mark of being human. When a child learns to walk, they fall many times, and no one scolds them for falling. We only celebrate that they are trying. Somewhere along the road to adulthood, you forgot that falling is part of moving, that mistakes are how we grow, that vulnerability is how we love. You began to believe that if you could just get everything right, no one would leave, no one would hurt you, nothing would break. But life is not something you can protect yourself from. It is something you enter into gently, boldly, openly. So maybe today, you place a hand over your chest. Feel the rise and fall, the quiet rhythm, proof that you are here still changing, still learning, still alive. You do not need certainty to move. You do not need perfection to be loved. You do not need to earn the right to simply exist. Let the world be what it is, unpredictable, tender, imperfect. Let yourself be what you are growing, feeling, becoming. You don't need to think your way through life. You are allowed to live it. Let this be the moment you exhale, the moment you come back to yourself, the moment you realize peace was never gone. It was only waiting for you to stop running.